Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June 8th, 2022 meeting of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. It is 9:04 a.m. And Raymond, I'm going to ask you to do roll call and let us know whether or not there are any public comments this morning, please.
Yes, ma'am. No public comments received. As for roll call, Joyce Wilson.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Joe Wardy.
Here.
Dorothy Bird.
Here.
Sylvester Reyes.
Here.
Mary Beth Stevens.
Here.
And Laura Enriquez, who is absent today.
Okay, thank
We do
you.
have a quorum.
Any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So I'll move to item number 2. And before doing that, I want to formally welcome Mary Beth Stevens to her first meeting here in the chambers. Welcome, and we're really glad to have you on the board. I hope you'll enjoy your time with us. It's really an interesting organization. We're doing a lot of great work, and there's a lot of opportunity in the near future that I think we're going to be very busy. So thank you for agreeing to join us.
No, I'm thrilled for the opportunity. Thank you.
And then I'm just going to let everyone handle their own mics and mute them off and on so that I'm not doing it at cross purposes with you. Is that okay today?
Sure.
Okay, great. So number 2 is the adoption of the minutes for the meeting, the board meeting of May 11th, 2022, and for the minutes of the strategic planning session of May 11th, 2022. Those were submitted as part of the agenda. As everybody, I hope, have had a chance to review them. I'll entertain comments and a motion.
I'll move to approve. I second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3 is discussion and action on the strategic plan for the 2022-2027 document resulting from our planning session on May 11th, 2022. I'd also like to acknowledge Ms. Tracy Yellen, who is here from the Paso del Norte Health Foundation. She was our facilitator and has helped us as we've put together this draft document. Now, I know that you just got this, Monday evening, and it's really not necessary for us to adopt it today, but Raymond wanted to have a fairly fast turnaround, at least in having a draft to look at and continue our discussions. And so at this point, Raymond, do you have anything to present?
Not necessarily. I've got the document pulled up in case you wanted to go through any of the provisions.
And so at this point, I'll entertain any discussion anyone has about the work we've done up to this point, what you have before you. If you have any concerns about the way it's set up and organized, or if you have any proposed changes. I'm also open to, if you'd like to refer it to the planning committee for a meeting before our next meeting to have some more intimate discussions where you can spend some more time on it. I'm okay with that. It's really up to the board as a body in terms of how you want to proceed at this point. Yes, sir.
I went over it in some detail, and first off, Tracy, wherever you are, what a fantastic job. I mean, as always, last year she did an amazing job and outdid herself this year. And trying to get this kind of meaningful stuff out of a group like us was quite a feat. And so thank you for that. I think there's a lot of meat in here that we can work with as a board, but also the planning committee. And I think our next session that I'll schedule with Raymond, we can start going over some detail and try to put some action plans together based on this.
And I'm also interested if there's anything in here that we've not included that you feel was covered. We try to include as much of the feedback from the various different work groups as possible. And we also went into a little more detail with beyond the broad goals, more objectives that are a little concrete, shorter term, because we review this every 2 years. And I really asked Raymond, and I know Tracy agreed that We need to be really focused over these next 12 to 24 months. There's a lot going on. And so if there's anything that's not included, or if there's things that are included that you also don't agree with, I would like for you all to vet that as part of the committee's work too, if you agree to do so.
Yeah, the big thing the planning committee wants to pursue with some vigor, and Silver and I have talked about this a lot, and that is we have to have an aggressive plan to go after this infrastructure money. There's just money is sitting out there that, so we're working, we want to work with the, with our consultants, and we want to work with getting proposals put together to get some of these grant money, actions that's available out there, and put together good proposals for those, and the money, somebody's going to get that money out there, and we've got so many neat things that we can do in the region that we want to try to develop a regional action plan for that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colonel.
I want to ask them.
Yes.
I would like to say thank you also to Tracy for the simple fact that that presentation was excellent to me, because you involved all of us. And even if we didn't want to make a comment, you made us make a comment. So therefore, and the different organizations, I think it was excellent. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
having been a veteran of too many of these planning sessions to count, I can tell you that this is probably one of the most enjoyable ones I've ever spent, because of the engagement of everybody involved in the process, including our partners, and especially from your leadership, Tracy and Madam Chair.
Thank
It was actually fun, and that's a word that you don't normally associate with these planning events. So thank you to everyone for being very open and honest, and I think we really have a good document to get going from.
Congressman?
Yes. A couple of meetings ago, we were asked to support that $100 million grant for UTEP.
Yes, sir.
And so I got some follow-up calls from some of the people from UTEP, reassuring that money, that they weren't going to pull okay, we got the 100 million, you get 10 million, and Austin gets 90 million. So I was just wondering, have you followed up on that with them, just to make sure they said that they had, I forget what the word was that they used, but they had assurances that money would come to UTEP.
Yeah, so I don't have sorry, I'm a little close. I don't have the final amount in terms of how much would come to UTEP versus the rest of the state, but I can certainly follow up and see if there's a number.
Yeah, just so they know we're tracking.
Sure. Yes, sir, I can do that.
Now, I don't know if this is the same grant, but they're a finalist and the only one in the state for this innovation, aerospace innovation grant that is $100 million. And the new district manager for Representative Gonzalez's district, Mr. Estrada, he actually helped to work on that when he was with the Department of Commerce. He was like a grant evaluator and actually worked with UTEP to help them with their strategy of how to apply. And so whether they get it or not, I don't know, but they're like the only one in the state, I think, at this point that is a finalist for that particular grant. This may be different from like infrastructure relative to the airport, but I'm thinking they're probably a pretty serious contender for it. And if it is, it's going to be a game changer in terms of economic development. And so Raymond's meeting with Mr. Estrada, because I asked them to follow up, since we're getting more involved in other infrastructure planning and maybe helping some of the smaller jurisdictions in the East County go after some of these dollars, so that we could get them in the loop so that they could help advocate for us to make sure that these communities get their fair share of the pie.
Yeah, so I think that is the same one
It is,
that we're
okay.
talking about.
It is.
And so that grant, if it is awarded will come 100% to UTEP.
Yeah.
The question then will be, so the reason it came to this board is that the county is involved in that grant application as well, and we drafted part of the document for a piece of the 100 million. So the question that I don't know the answer to is how much of that grant, if awarded, would come through UTEP to the county for their airport improvements.
Yeah.
But I
That we
can
would
get
be
those
involved
details.
in.
But 100% of it would, as I understand it, 100% of it would come to UTEP. It wouldn't be any of it going to Austin. It's about UTEP improvements, a UTEP grant.
And the RMA potentially would then be involved in the work for
Correct.
the improvements to the airport and the infrastructure as part of our relationship with the county. We would execute some of that.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's very exciting.
Worth making sure that we keep an eye on it.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Because in Austin, they're pretty sneaky.
that's true.
Agreed.
Well, is this an action item for the?
There's not, well, if you're ready to take action, we could approve it. But Tracy, did you have any feedback? Did you have any more comments to the document? Or changes? Because we don't necessarily have, we could table it to the next meeting if you want some time, if you want to spend more time on it. It's up to you.
Good morning, everyone. I think that it's definitely at a high level, the guide that will be useful for the next 2 years. I think the details are, still to be fleshed out, right? What do you want to accomplish over the next 2 years? And I think that seems like to be really good work for the planning committee to put more meat on the skeleton that is the
Okay.
direction you're headed. But that would be my only comment of the additional work that would need to be done. And then just to make sure the document might include those other opportunities with other partners. I don't think we included UTEP specifically in any of that language, but I think, that could be something that would be added.
So we could expand that under Goal 3, where we have meeting with the Borderplex, the Chamber, Hispanic Chamber, all the economic development agencies, maybe, and say, and the institutions of higher education, UTEP, Texas Tech, the MCA, include those other institutions that may be relevant to the economic development discussions where transportation infrastructures.
Yeah, because that might
Important.
be something, if, should that not be funded, and hopefully it is, but that portion of the project might still be really important strategically to pursue, so it's ready for the next round or something else.
Okay.
So does this go in phases? Do we adopt this general plan and then through the year flesh it out? Is that what we?
Yeah, I would ask the Planning Commission to work on prioritizing what are the low-hanging fruits, maybe the things we should do immediately. And if there's more detail we need to add to this.
Yeah, I would say that detailed action planning, I think there are a couple of sub-bullets, but I think those can get more detailed on a
Okay.
year-to-year basis.
And actually, I would ask that maybe in the next 90 days, you really vet that and come back with like, at least what is the first 12-month strat? What are the things that we definitely want to focus on for the next 6 to 12 months that are part of Raymond's evaluation in terms of his performance and things that we can actually deliver? I mean, we've talked about, the branding component. We ought to execute that pretty quickly. Developing annual presentations, reaching out to these agencies. I think those are things that within the first 12 months we should commit to do. But I would like to amend it that where we say deliver the annual report to the MPO, the commissioners, and the city council, and then I put other relevant political jurisdictions,
Yeah.
because I think that then opens it up. There may be some others that we might want to go to periodically or at least annually that we're partnering with. And then the second one, meet with the Borderplex chambers, et cetera, and our major institutions of higher education, at least generically saying that. And that gives you a little more flexibility to understand their transportation needs relative to economic development. And that kind of then, I think, is a little more expansive if you're open to those changes.
Because we can make modifications at any time.
Oh, yeah, we can always bring it back.
Okay.
But if you're comfortable with it, I'm fine entertaining a motion. I just didn't want to feel like we were rushing you.
I'm I'm personally comfortable with this because I think we're gonna continually put meat on it as we go through the year. And part of one of the goals here ought to be to get roller skates for Raymond and Robert so that they can keep up with, everything that needs to be done.
Well, we've asked them to look at staffing as part of this, and also how we use our consultants maybe more broadly to supplement our internal staff to do more things for us that need to be done, so that capacity is not an issue. And I think we need to make sure that we stay on top of that, that we take advantage of those resources where we can.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I must have missed it, and I know I went through this thing, but, you know, we had, Santa Teresa plays, Santa Teresa is beginning to play a very large role in economic development for the region, and there are traffic issues as a result of that, and I think we need to have the Southern New Mexico people, as well as Jerry Pacheco's group, the Border Authority, I think it is, involved. They have some high-level planning documents that I think would be important to us to look at, and maybe even invite him to present to the RMA at a meeting, and so that we all can understand what they perceive their needs to be. I don't see that on here, and maybe I know we said Southern New Mexico, but I think we need to be a little bit more specific about Santa Teresa.
So I think you're right. We intended to cover that through the Southern New Mexico reference.
Okay.
But if you're interested in specifically identifying Santa Teresa, we could certainly add
It's
that.
just my input into the process.
No, I think we should. I think we should be as specific and inclusive as possible.
And we have been doing that, Jim and I.
Oh, no, I know, but I mean formally.
More formally.
Well, we're trying to get everybody scheduled to sync, but that's a good idea to ask if they would like to come make a presentation there, and then we could offer the same.
Just a thought.
That part is in goal 1. The third one down.
It says Southern New Mexico for infrastructure development. We just say our Southern New Mexico partners, but maybe there we expand that and get more specific about who those partners are, including but not limited to, boom, 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 boom.
Right.
Right.
So maybe that's another amendment there we can modify. Mary Beth, do you have any
So-
comments? I know you weren't able to participate because of technical difficulties trying to get into the meeting electronically. What is your reaction to this, I guess, as someone who's relatively new?
I thought it was clear. I liked it. It gave me a better sense of the priorities for the group. But yeah, definitely will need meat as we
Okay.
moves along. Just one comment is, and it's comment/question, with regard to Southern New Mexico and Santa Teresa. With the discussions regarding a port of entry in Sunland Park, is that an issue that we need to be?
We could assist on
Monitoring.
that potentially down the road to help them execute it. I mean, that's something within our purview to do.
I don't know
actually,
how much
Joe
traction it
Wardy,
has.
during the discussion, talked about us looking at creating like becoming a port authority through the county, and maybe using that as a way to help engage and leverage so we could assist in developing some of that infrastructure.
Okay. I don't know really how much legs it has, but it bubbles up occasionally.
Yes.
And it seems to gain traction every once in a while. But probably Jerry Pacheco and his group would
They would
have
know,
a
yeah.
great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so did you capture all the amendments that
Yes,
we've
ma'am.
put in so far? Any other amendments, comments? If so, I'll entertain a motion to either approve it with changes or table it to the next meeting.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve it with the understanding that this is a working document that can be amended by the body at any time to adapt to the needs of the community. And as we gain more specific knowledge and information on important projects.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. It passes. Thank you all very much for all your time and effort on this, and I look forward to seeing the work of the planning committee going forward. And if there's things that the finance or executive committee need to tackle, I'll rely on you to refer those back to those committees so that we can address those, if that's okay.
I think the finance and executive committee need to find some money for us to pay consultants so that we can do some of the stuff we need to do to submit for grants.
Well, we do have some reserves now that I think we ought to start looking at whether or not those would be opportunities to tap into on a limited basis for some of these efforts. Clearly with the understanding that if we provide seed money for these different projects, that we'd also have an interlocal that if they get the grant, we would then be able to execute the project on their behalf and then, of course, recoup like administrative fees for the execution, which is really what we should be doing.
Okay,
So I
and
think
that-
we coordinate with the county and with both of our consultants and Raymond in concert in terms of making sure that we're targeted and we go after things that we have a high opportunity for success. And that we also aren't competing. I want to be really careful because I know that the Chamber Transportation Committee, they've actually raised money to hire a grant writer to do some work in concert with the city, but I think they're focusing more on central city projects. I just want to make sure that we're not going after the same pools of money and we get into conflict, that we're competing with one another. So there needs to be really good coordination and communication about who's doing what and what the different pots are. And I think our consultants can help on some of that. You know, and there's also the relief route, Northeast relief route. There might be some opportunities there, and we just need to make sure that we're all working in coordination with everybody else so we're not competing for the same dollars. And I know Raymond's involved in some of those entities, and we'll just have to rely on you to make sure that they know what we're doing and we know what they do.
Yes, ma'am. So to that point, I've been speaking with Eduardo Calvo periodically about some of the efforts we're involved in. And in fact, a potential conflict did arise and we identified it and we've combined our efforts. So this is on the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. So we definitely have that in mind. We will not be competing against one of our own region.
That's awesome. And I think the MPO is probably the easiest vehicle to coordinate through because they seem to have the big picture, including what's going on in southern New Mexico too, in terms of their projects. So, okay, thank you. And once again, thank you, Tracy. And we'll circle back with you and appreciate all your time and effort. Great job. All right. Okay, I have logged out here again. Let me see. Okay, my thing is off, Raymond. So I don't have the agenda now. Is it you?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I can get off my phone if I need to. Okay, I got it. I'm good. If we talk too much, then, like, my computer goes to sleep. Doesn't refresh. Okay, so we're moving on then to item 4, discussion and action on a board resolution to authorize the execution of an amendment to the interlocal agreement with El Paso County for the Pelicano Drive roadway improvement project for the use of vehicle registration fee funds to acquire right-of-way requested by El Paso County.
Thank you. I don't think I announced my name for the record. I apologize for that. Raymond Tace, Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. So read into the record is item 4, the Pelicano project. We do have Sal Alonso from the county, should you have any technical questions or questions of the county. As read into the record, though, this relates to Pelicano and specifically there are some parcels that needed to be purchased and some easements for drainage and pipes to run through in order to complete this project. The county had been negotiating that with the property owner and has come to a resolution and agreement on that. So what you see before you then today is an interlocal amendment that would provide $1.7 million of vehicle registration fee funds to the RMA so that we may pay for the purchase of the parcels and also the drainage and pipeline easement. So that's what you see before you. So do you have any questions? Again, I think Mr. Alonso is here to answer any questions from the county.
So, can you give us a broader update on this project? Because you and I talked, because I got feedback that this project's been delayed, and there's been some concerns with the performance of the contractor and the ability of that contractor to complete this project, like
Yep.
subs not getting paid or something to that effect, and not being able to get materials.
Yes, ma'am. So I do have I have a PowerPoint that we recently presented to the county that I was going to present under item 8B, but I can certainly do it now if you'd like.
I would like to do it so
Sure.
we can just take this project in its totality, if that's okay.
Oops. Okay, so as you mentioned, there have been some concerns that have been raised about the Pelicano project in terms of timeline. This project has run into a number of issues related to utility issues, and so we'll talk about this. The question was raised by Commissioners Court recently, and they asked for an update from county staff at this past Monday's Commissioners Court, and I was there as well. So Mr. Alonso presented this exact PowerPoint, so that's what I'm sharing with you all. So of course, as an intro, the project team is made up of the RMA serving as a project management team. We have CEA Group, a local design firm providing the design activities. Construction management is handled by our GEC, Atkins North America, and the construction contractor on this project is JAR Concrete. The total contract amount initially awarded was $21.6 million. So the scope is from Joe Battle, which is Loop 375, heading east all the way to Darrington Road, to design and build a 6-lane divided roadway with bike lanes and hike and bike trails. There's illumination, landscaping, and stormwater management as well. So it's very similar to many of the projects that we're developing on the county's behalf. We have run into a number of delays so far, some of them related to COVID-19, which tie into the second one as well, which is this contractor is saying that they are having trouble identifying crews, providing crews, and also identifying materials. Material availability has been difficult, according to this contractor. And then this third bullet is a large issue as well. We've run into quite a number of unforeseen utility conflicts. As noted here, it's an older area of development. So there's a lot of utilities out there that are not marked on the as-built in the correct places. So each time we run into that, obviously it stops the project while we try to figure out how to work around those. And we'll talk a little bit more in detail about those. In terms of possible future delays, the contractor has identified issues with cement availability. There are some shortages in California that have pulled a lot of those cement resources towards California, if I remember correctly. So it has tightened up the cement market. And of course, continued utility unforeseen conditions as we continue to break ground heading east. And then materials availability and pricing is another one. And we talked a little bit about that at our planning session last month with supply chain issues and the like. This is an aerial. So to orient you, this is 375 over here, and then heading eastbound, we're heading all the way to Darrington, which is here on the right-hand side of this graphic. So complete is the yellow section, which is the eastbound 3 lanes from Loop 375 to Air Coop, which is this roadway right here. We're currently pouring in this section right here in the red, heading this way. And we're doing, in fact, actually right now we're doing night pours because of the heat. And then we're hopeful that by September we will be done with this red section here, which is heading west from Air Coop all the way back to 375. And that's really important because the majority of of the usage is in this section here. Now, certainly there are users that head all the way down to Darrington and head into Horizon City and other areas in that section. But the primary usage, the heavier usage, is right here. So we're really focusing on this section. So we're hopeful to get that westbound section done by September. We also think we can get this purple section here, which is also westbound from Darrington heading over to Aircoop. We think we can get that done by September. And these dates come from the contractor's latest schedule. And then the last section that we would focus on would be this blue section here, which is eastbound heading from Aircoop all the way out to Darrington. We think we can get that done, or the contractor believes they can get that done by January. And so here's some of the activities. Joe Battle to Sunfire, we're finalizing embankment. This is all anticipated for June. Finalizing the embankment, installing water and sanitary sewer laterals, and flex base. And actually, let me go back. So I talked a little bit about some of the delays. I'll give you an example of one of the larger delays that we've had. This section here in red was put on hold because of a number of unknown utilities that we encountered. And they were significant enough that it required a redesign of this activity. So normally when you have a conflict, for example, if it's a perpendicular conflict, you could build around it, you can build over it, you can do all sorts of things. Well, these conflicts were significant enough, and they were on the north side of the roadway where we had planned storm drains to be placed. Those storm drains had to be moved to the median. So it sounds like a minor ordeal, but we actually required redesign, which put the entire project on hold. So there's a number of those types of activities that we've run into. And couple that with the crew, the issues with the contractor trying to identify crews and that sort of thing, and that's how we ended up here. So again, back to June, Joe Battle to Sunfire, we're focusing on these three areas: embankment, water and sanitary sewer laterals, and flexible base. And then from Sunfire, heading over to Aircoop, we'll be completing concrete, and that's what I mentioned we're doing right now. Last week they did quite a bit of pouring. And Aircoop out to Darrington, installation of water loops, finalize embankment, start installation of flexible base, which is placed underneath the concrete, so the concrete will come after that, and installation of 2 water line laterals and a rock wall. So that's what June looks like. These are some additional activities that the county has committed to, and that is presentations to partner agencies to keep the partner agencies up to date on this project. So they're talking about going to the MPO, and of course the RMA will support that effort as well. So we'll go to the MPO, we'll go to City Council, Socorro Independent School District, and Horizon City Council, and they will beef up their external communications outreach. So that's social media updates with photos, exhibits, and schedules, and that'll all go through the county's communications office. And then also we'll support community meetings to neighborhood associations and watch groups. Here's some photos for you, and this is all part of your backup, so you have this. You can flip through it at your leisure and let me know of any questions. This is some of the embankment that is being dealt with. Here's a recent pour at the end of May that was completed. Here's some additional concrete work at the intersection of 375 and Pelicano. Right there is the gas station that's on the frontage road, to give you a feel for where that is. Here's some water loops that are being installed. Just as an aside, like many of the projects that we're involved in, we partner with El Paso Water to make sure that we don't go in and build something and then have to tear it out later while they make their improvements. So this is actually water improvements for El Paso Water that we're developing while we're in there. Mission Ridge Relief Route. I'll go back to to here. This roadway here is Mission Ridge, which you may recall we built many, many years ago for them. There's a relief route that we've put into place up here for the duration of this project, and that's what that photo is of this relief route, so that a lot of the folks can utilize that to get around some of the construction activities we're involved in. And that's what you see here. There are developments on the east side of the relief route that we've had to make adjustments for to allow them to put their improvements into place. Reshaping swales and rock riprap placement as well. So those are the activities that we're involved in. So that's general status of where we are.
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as the presentations that you have listed on there, are they all scheduled and done?
No, ma'am, this was just presented to Commissioners Court on Monday, and the court was supportive of this, so then now we'll begin those activities.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And are these deadlines for project completion realistic?
We believe so. It's aggressive, but if the contractor's been working really hard all through the end of May. So again, going back, the contractor had identified some issues with concrete and finding that material. That was a real impact to the schedule. Because the concrete powder has now been purchased, we think we can get back on track.
Okay.
It's aggressive, though. I will say
Okay.
that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't understand the concrete issue, Raymond. I
Well-
mean, we have 3 or 4 major providers in the community that are very competitive for this. Is it the successful bidder for the contractor could not provide the material? Or can you explain it in a little
Sure.
more detail?
So what you just said is exactly what the contractor has told us. So he purchases his concrete, as I understand it, from a group out of Arizona. In Arizona, because of the shortage in California, a lot of that cement is being pushed out to California. This is, again, and actually Mr. Alonso can correct me if I misspeak, but this is how it's been explained to me. So because of that pull on the material out to California, it's shorting, his supplier has been shorting the folks that are buying from him. So this contractor now has gone to a different provider. Our contractor, JAR, has gone to a different provider to secure those materials.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
My only question is, to Sal and to you, these are pretty significant, but they're not unusual for these times. And my question is the county and the RMA, are we comfortable that everybody is working through this in good faith?
Well, I'll take a first stab at that. We're definitely working in good faith. I'll tell you, we've done things on this project that we've never had to do before. One example is that there's a process known as partnering sessions, which we don't normally utilize on smaller projects. This is a $20 million project in general terms. That's it's a good sized project, but it's not like a streetcar 100 million. It's not like Border West 600-700 million. In those larger projects, you do quarterly partnering sessions where the heads of all the teams come together, identify problems, identify solutions, and then follow up on that. Well, we implemented that on this project on a monthly basis. We meet every month to figure out what the hurdles are, and more importantly, how we can all partner to fix them. So I would say that we've got a good working relationship with the contractor. Serious hurdles, but I think we'd be in a much worse spot if we weren't all partnering like this. But I'll let Mr. Alonso speak to it.
Good morning. For the record, Sal Alonso, Associate Director of Planning and Development for El Paso County. Thank you for having me this morning, and thank you for Mr. Tea's presentation. If there's anything I could add to Mr. Tea's is that we've gone, like Mr. Tea says, above and beyond. I think we want to make sure that we keep this project moving. We have a good partnership with this group. With the Atkins group and of course with the RMA, we want to make sure that there's nothing that lags behind. This project is obviously behind schedule, but we're doing everything that we can to make sure the contractor is being pushed at all times. That's why we meet with him with the group once a month, but we also have almost weekly meetings about this project just to make sure that any potential conflict, any potential issue that may come up, we want to make sure that we're hands-on to make sure that this project is being moving forward. But we do assure you that yes, the communication is there, most definitely, and we want to make sure that we keep this communication, all lines communication open on both ends. And this presentation and the presentation that we did for Commissioner's Court is just one step, just to make sure, because it is a high-profile project because this is a highly used road. if you don't know, we get a lot of traffic, so it is seen by the public as a big project. And when there's no work, and there's nothing to be done, as you may know, that's when all these questions come about. So I know Commissioners Court was really supportive of our efforts on going out to the public, and now with presenting to the MPO, City Council, here at the RMA board, just to make sure that everybody is aware about the status of this project and to assure them that we are doing everything possible on our end to make sure this project is successful at the very end.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Are there performance penalties for this in these contracts for instance, on this contractor?
Liquidated damages?
Because I think you're
Yeah,
dancing
yes.
around, I'll just be frank and honest for my fellow board members, you're dancing
know.
around an issue of a pretty poor performance and excuses by a contractor. I mean, the major supplier for cement in the entire region is located right across the border from us. That, to quote an old saying, that sounds like a personal problem to me. I mean, what are the issues here when we have a contractor that is not performing? And that's, you're dancing around the issue here. I think that's what you're telling us.
Well,
If you have to babysit him.
I don't mean to dance around it, and I'll speak more directly. There are performance issues. We do have penalties referred to as liquidated damages, but they are not in play just yet, and that's because a number of the issues that we run into are unforeseen conditions, right? So when we have to redesign because there are utilities that were unknown, we have to add time to the contract. So when we add all of those days, and we've got a couple of claims by the contractor for those unforeseen conditions that we haven't identified the number of days it will be added. Once we add those, it will push it out quite a bit. But because of some of the performance issues and the purchasing of materials and all those sorts of things, those are solely and squarely on the contractor. So
That's my point.
That's
You
right.
know,
And
the
so-
contract, the concrete issue, that's a major, that's your business. I mean, if you can't provide this, you're basically out of compliance with your contract. And this is a very important contract, I know, for the RMA and the county.
So to finish that point, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and that's what the LDs are for, the liquidated damages. That's why they're in there. So once we get past the days that we have to grant for the unforeseen conditions and all those other sorts of things, then there will be a date certain by which he needs to complete. And if there is a gap between that date and the date that he actually completes, we receive liquidated damages for each of those days up until completion. So they are built in.
What requirements, if any, are there for the subcontractors, for instance, purchasing the concrete to look locally first?
I do not believe that we do not have the ability to require local purchasing. Now, there's a very narrow statute on the books that came in, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, that allows municipalities to buy local and award points for that, but RMAs do not have that ability.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, are there any other discussions about the project update itself? If not, we need to go back to item 4 and take action on the resolution so that they can move forward with the right-of-way acquisition.
Motion to approve?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. If there's no more comments on the project update, I'll move to item number 5. Is that okay? All right, thank you. Discussion and action on a board resolution to authorize the issuance of offers to landowners in connection with the acquisition of property for the John Hayes Street Extension Project.
Okay, Raymond Tays again. I've got another graphic for you to remind you of this particular project. So as you may recall, for this one, on behalf of the county, we're providing design services and will provide ultimately construction activities. But before that, we are also providing right-of-way acquisition activities. So if IT could bring up this graphic, I can show you some of the parcels. There we go. So to orient you then, this here is John Hayes, this in yellow. And these parcels here, from here all the way down, these 11 parcels need to be acquired. So as part of the process, what we do is and this is a federally funded project, so we've got all sorts of processes we have to complete in order to make sure that it's compliant with federal processes so that we can utilize federal funds for the construction activities. One of those is a letter that goes out with an actual offer that is based on appraisals, formal appraisals that are completed. So those appraisals are nearly done for all of these. So I figured it was the right time to come to you with this item, which is asking for authorization to issue the offer letters. And I can share with you the details once those offer letters then start going out the door in terms of what those offer amounts are for. Again, Mr. Alonso's here should you have any questions from the county, but subject to your approval, I would recommend, subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said the letters would go out to the property owners. About how many property owners are there?
Well, I believe there's one owner per parcel, so there's 11 parcels and 11 owners.
11 owners.
I don't believe there are let me confirm that, though. That's my understanding right now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'll let you know if it's otherwise.
Wait a minute, I have another question. So have these owners had any kind of knowledge of these letters coming out or anything at all?
Yes, ma'am. There's an initial letter of intent that goes out to them, and that's part of the federal process, so that has gone out to them. And then the appraiser reaches out and actually speaks with each of these property owners before the appraisals begin.
Okay.
So they
thank
are
you.
all aware.
Put the graph back up, if you don't mind.
IT?
Okay, see, looking at this, Ms. Bird, you can see the blue.
Mhm.
Those are the ones that have permission, they've already granted permission to sell. So those are the offers. The only one that's sort of out there is the little red ones where they've not gotten a response. Is that correct?
So actually, this is an older graphic. This was intended really just to give you a feel for where it is.
Oh, okay.
So those are not updated status. That's not an updated status.
Okay.
We've spoke, as I
So is
understand.
everyone given, do you have secured permission from everybody now?
Well, so each of them have received letters of intent. We've made contact with each of them, and we've completed the appraisals for most of them.
Okay, so now you're ready to go to the formal offer.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes,
great,
ma'am.
that's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that. I should have mentioned that at the outset.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion, questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I make the motion that this be approved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item number 6, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the execution of the following revised documents for the Tornillo North and South Sidewalk Shared Use Path Project. 6A, amendment to the interlocal agreement with El Paso County. And 6B, amendment to work authorization number 39 with Atkins North America, Inc.
This one may look familiar. We actually brought this one to you last month, but we had some issues with these two items. So as a reminder, and I've got this graphic up for you, these are the activities that we'll be doing for the Tornillo North sidewalks and the Tornillo South sidewalks. So this project is being done for the county of El Paso. In the last month item, we had an incorrect amount on the interlocal agreement. So as a reminder, whenever we partner up with the county, we have an initial interlocal agreement that goes between the RMA and the county that provides us with the authorization to begin the work. It also provides the funding from the county to us to begin the work. So that's what started the design activities. And then subsequent to that, then we amend it to bring in construction dollars. And that's what we did last month. However, this project is actually being constructed by the county, so they retained the construction activities. So we're doing the construction inspection and oversight. So what we had was a larger amount, which we believe included the construction amount in the interlocal, so that was incorrect. So what we're doing is we're dropping that interlocal amount down to an addition of $394,000, and that's what you see under item 6A. So that's a correction there. Under 6B, we just had an oversight on that one. Atkins, as you know, provides our construction management, construction oversight activities. They had omitted a subcontractor with about $4,000 worth of activities. So we've increased that amount up to $321,000. That's what you see under item 6B. So Subject to your questions, I would recommend approval of this item.
Motion to approve?
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 7, discussion and action on a board resolution revising the scoring criteria for the selection of one or more professional engineering firms for indefinite deliverable contracts.
This one you may recall as well. I brought this one to you back in April. I do have a graphic for you on this one as well. So as a reminder, generally we use a general engineering consultant team to do oversight and major activities for us. And then we have an indefinite deliverables contract, which we basically have on-call engineering services for us. And we do that about every 3 years. So we're due for another one. Back in April, I came to you with this request for for an approval of scoring criteria, and that's what you see up on in the top. However, that was based on the last IDC, indefinite deliverables contract procurement that we did. And if you notice that the scoring was based on a sample project. So we provided a sample project to the IDC firms and asked them to provide sample schedules and really just answer the question, how would you go about this project? That's a much more intensive approach. What we did more recently in the general engineering consultant procurement is basically just look at their qualifications. And that's what you see under the second table there. And that's what I'm recommending that you review and approve today. So rather than providing a sample project to the IDC firms, we would just prefer that we get their qualifications, we evaluate their qualifications and select them on that basis. So what you see then again under that second table is what you will see in the backup for this item. So I would recommend approval of this as well.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
who reviews this?
Yeah, I was going to ask that too.
We use a independent selection group, so we will use all of our stakeholders, primarily the county. Hopefully, TxDOT will participate. The City of El Paso, all of our stakeholder groups do the evaluation. We normally use professional engineers because this is a qualifications-based selection.
Okay. Because the second group of criteria, I'm not trying to throw a fly in the ointment here, seems much more subjective than the previous one.
Put that
Just
back.
looking at your graph.
Well, it's a little probably more open to interpretation. Can you put that back up for the
IT,
group?
could you bring?
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we bring these to you. So if you're uncomfortable with the amounts or even any of the criteria, that's why they're here.
Yeah, because it looks like, if you look at the first one versus the second one, it looks like you've got number 1 and 1, 2, and 3 kind of all lumped in a little differently. I guess it's not that different except for the project schedule, which is probably irrelevant because you don't.
Well, and also the project understanding and approach,
Yeah.
those two, that 45% really wouldn't apply since we won't have a sample project for them to submit.
And
I think some of the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, please, Madam Chair.
I think some of the sensitivity is that you want to make sure that you get a diverse array of firms and it's not just a few larger firms, that when you look at it just sort of on the surface, they're automatically going to show up as having more bench strength and capacity and experience versus some of the kind of mid-sized, I mean, there's a lot of different firms, local firms, so we just need to make sure that however this criteria is used, that that's given some weight.
Well, and I will tell you,
Is that?
primarily the IDC, well, several of the IDC firms are in fact local. So CEA, MCI, both of those local firms are on the IDC team. So that's,
Okay,
yeah, understood.
okay, all right.
And I'm very forgetful, Mr. Tejas. What drove you wanting, or the change here?
To get away from having to develop a sample project, basically. The time, cost, resources necessary for that.
Yeah,
I
but
think-
you kind of have to prove your bones to get business from us. So the other one, if you can hire somebody that can write, you can, I mean, I could give you proposed staffing on an entity. That happens all the time. I'm just, me
Sure.
personally, I'm uncomfortable with the approach, but
Well,
Could
I
you
will tell
add
you,
a
that's
cr-
the exact approach that we use for the general engineering consultant team, right? Because we don't have a project that we could utilize to select a GEC team.
that's a little bit,
for,
that's a little bit different though. It's quite a bit different.
okay.
Is there some way to add a category that basically forces them to provide specific project demonstration of comparable successful projects within a dollar range or something that's kind of similar with ours, where
Certainly.
they have to like actually show, instead of doing a pretend project, they actually have to show projects they've actually worked on, either they've led or participated on a scale where, you know, we have an idea of like the dollar values of our projects. You know, we have some that are relatively small. We have some big ones, like this $21 million project we just discussed, where you're looking at the firm's capacity to design a project that's anywhere from a few million to a mega project. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I would do that in the context of the things we're anticipating we might be able to participate in with the infrastructure bond that could be fairly substantial and complex.
Madam Chair, that was the point I was trying to make. With our general engineering consultants, it's very easy to see what they do and what they have done and the team that they already have in place. They're not proposing. It's not really apples to apples comparison. I understand where you're coming from. I'm not challenging you, Mr. Tejas.
No,
I'm
please.
just
That's
for the
why we're
members
here.
of the board. I'm really careful about subjective criteria because it lends itself to subjective interpretation. So that's just my point. That's just my individual viewpoint.
Well, so if I understand you correctly, and I think rolling in Ms. Wilson's comments, I think under the first item, which is experience and ability of the firm and the team, we could really draw into that a requirement that requires them to define a project, identify a project that they've done, and answer.
Yeah, like 3 to 5 examples of projects of a similar scope and scale to the ones they might be working on for us. I mean, they don't have to do 3 to 5, but maybe at least 2 or 3, I think, at least 3 examples, whether they were a partner and participated in it or they led it or something like that.
Certainly, we can do that.
So,
Just need to be careful not to write it such that, to your point earlier, local smaller firms might not have the capability of that, but have the ability to demonstrate the ability to scale up.
Right. Absolutely.
and I think that's why I'm saying start with the lower dollar value of projects that we do up to a potential of a project we might do, because you could still have an array of firms where you have some firms that could do smaller projects and then those that are larger in scale too, you know?
Right, and I would mention the IDC, this program is not intended to cover a mega project, right? If we were involved in a Border West or
So we would go out for a separate scope of work
for the larger
that.
projects,
Okay.
we always have.
All
We
right, well,
always
that's
have.
fine, then we're looking at the smaller scale projects in general then,
When
right?
I say smaller, we also awarded Pelicano, which is 21
I know,
million,
well,
right?
that's what I'm saying.
That's a reasonable project
Yeah.
for a local
But if we
firm
do
to
$100
handle.
million project, that would be a project you would go out
Exactly.
and do a specific RFP, right? Or
Yes, ma'am.
RFQ for
RFQ, yes,
something of
ma'am.
that scale, okay. All right. Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Any other discussion or questions?
Could I just add a little color to that? So the last time we did this, the county paid for it, and I think it cost 7 to 8 times what we're expecting to pay, and we're footing the bill on this one. So I think that's one of the reasons we changed our approach a little bit to not use the sample project. There's a lot more legwork that Raymond mentioned that is required to review that, to go through all the details, because it's pretty intensive, and so that was part of the reason for this
Okay.
change of approach.
And that's, as long as the partners who are going to be participating in this are comfortable with what we're doing, that will, you know, secure the kinds of resources that will meet our needs, that's fine with me. But I think the addition of that detail will be helpful.
Yes, ma'am. I'll do that.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8, quarterly presentation, update and discussion on the following programs or projects. We've already done, oh no, the Borderland Express, no, these are different projects, I'm sorry. We did the one on the Pelicano, that was under B, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I got confused because I didn't see it listed specifically when I got down here. Okay, so 8A, the Borderland Expressway Project, and then B, the 2013 El Paso County Comprehensive Mobility Plan.
Well, so on this one, I'll just mention that as part of your backup on, 8A, the Borderland Expressway Project, I've included as part of the backup the notice of the public hearing that TxDOT has issued for this particular project. Mr. Smith, I'm not sure if you wanted to share any details on that one.
Well, if I had the physical ability, I'd jump up and click my heels, because this has been a long time coming, and Mr. Wardy and I and many others started this process many years ago, and the coalition that we have worked on ever since our first coalition meeting, I think, was in like November of 2016, where all the stakeholders came together, and one of the if not the longest pole in the tent was the environmental, and getting to the point where we could have a public hearing, which is one of the final steps to approval of the environmental, is a huge milestone. And so kudos to all those that have worked so hard on that, especially kudos to TxDOT and Mimi, who has worked tirelessly on that. And then as we've stated before, the funding for the first phase has been identified and earmarked by the MPO. And so if all goes well, we should be breaking ground on phase 1 at the early part of the next calendar year. So, like I say, if I could click my heels, I would, but you'd probably have to call an ambulance. So.
Do we have a role in this project? Or is
Um,
TxDOT going to build it directly?
Currently, I believe TxDOT is involved, but we have been discussing that with them for quite some time.
We've been working on that real hard.
It'd be a really great opportunity if they let us do
Yeah,
it.
this would be I have done, I would really, matter of fact, I think we could go forward with an initial proposal, maybe formally from the RMA, to in writing request to do phase 1 and make them do an action as opposed to we'll think about it type thing
Okay.
verbally.
Why don't we do that? Do we need to do that as a formal action?
No, ma'am.
Okay. That would be really, that would be great, considering that the board and the organization played a major role in helping to advance the project.
Just a refresher for everybody, phase 1 is about a $20 million project, and it is the frontage road on both sides of the freeway between Railroad Drive and Dyer. So pretty significant, especially for economic development of that Public Service Board city-owned property in that area.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Good work, gentlemen. Congratulations.
And with that, then it's just item 8B, which I've provided the Pelicano specific update, but then there's also the normal quarterly update that's provided each quarter to you as part of your backup. So that's all we have.
Is
for
there
you today.
anything noteworthy on that you want to highlight?
No, ma'am. Pelicano's the hot one.
Okay. Would it be possible to do an update on Pelicano in September?
Of course.
Because September was like a kind of a critical date for a couple of those segments. And at least we could then, like, if you could just give us an update at the September board meeting to let us know, like, is that still realistic? Or we run into other issues, I think that would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am. And of course, if anything goes awry, it'll come before that.
Before then, yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
that's fine. Any other, we don't have executive session, right?
No, ma'am.
Any other business?
No.
All right, well, thank you for your time today. It was a great meeting. Thanks for all your feedback and input on the plan. Thanks to all of you for being here with us. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It's 10:09 a.m.
So moved.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.